Hello, I am Radagast, and I am joined by Raksha Moose for another Mystic and the Moose, and or we're going to call this one Countdown to the Eclipse. So, Raksha, why don't you come in and say hello?
Hello, everyone. How are you tonight?
Well, I'm well. I'm hoping. I just want a quick shout out to my subscribers. I've the ones who are staying with me. It's been a nutrition kind of week. Mystic Brews have, with all the, I've been practicing, I've been doing a lot of music, so haven't really had that much time. And there's just and we'll be part of this conversation with this countdown to the eclipse. There's just so much energy sitting on things that it's almost like, where do I start? So to anybody who's, I hope are also Mystic Brew watchers, my apologies for not getting them out as much as I have. It's just, and talking during the pre-show talk with Raksha, or Moose, um, it's just so helpful because I'm so pent up with all this energy. It's like after after unloading and sometimes almost in gibberish, I feel like I can then turn the camera on and be coherent. So thank you, Moose, not just for joining me again for another show, but for the pre-show and listening to all those different streams of consciousness. Some of them have just kind of drifted off.
Of course, as we used to say, in my days in the church, I can interpret your babblings.
Yeah, almost slipped into speaking. Yeah, almost slipped into some tongues there.
It's all good. It's all good.
But so much of it is tied in to the two major events, and of course the one that people probably consider the major event is the solar eclipse coming up this week.
Yes. And
Um,
if you noticed when when we were messaging before the pre-show, I felt completely zapped of energy. Today was a very heavy day for me, and in the fibromyalgia world, we call it a Mack truck day. Um, couldn't get out of the sleep cycle, full of dreams today. But then as soon as we hit the pre-show, it was like that spark of life came in, and I came alive too. So you probably had a lot of my gibberish and ramblings and half sentences, and so there's a lot of powerful energies afoot.
yeah, and oh gee, again, I had like this big volume. Oh, well, anyway, we're probably gonna talk a little bit about sometimes about some of the shows Moose is doing because it ties in with this energy. Specifically, that in one of your shows when you mentioned about it feeling like in the third trimester, something that I am, we had shared together. And then when you spoke it publicly, I remember it's like, yeah. But I think the term pregnant or expecting, and again in the late stuff where it's no longer cute, it's now like it's like I'm ready to do this.
Yes.
And there just seems to be an energy that to me, subtly perceived feels like that. But almost everybody speaks of like a feeling like a heaviness, something about the pop. I mean, a lot of different metaphors that's to me kind of add up to the same thing of that so there's a pregnancy, there's going to be a release point, and prior to that release point, there's just more intensifying of the energy with maybe a little bit of time for mother to sleep. But I mean, you see everybody just seems to be going for turn it to 11. I mean, it's like we're having like like a major countrywide Spinal Tap moment or something.
It's been quite the interesting week, month, couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it is definitely leading up to the birthing of something. There can't be a build up that continually builds up without a release. If you kind of look at it like in practical terms, like a pimple,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just have a pimple that just builds up and builds up without it popping.
Right.
Very rarely you'll get a big one that won't come to a head.
Right.
That'll come back down. But this one obviously is coming to a head.
Yeah.
And we would be foolish not to at least look at it. Maybe from a distance so we don't get splattered. But we should be looking at it. And I think that's part of what we'll be doing tonight in the discussion in the countdown to the eclipse.
Well, I think, like the common drive that you and I are feeling towards about trying to create dialogue, cohesion, communication, community. Excuse me. There seems to be an urgency to it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Which is, some people might go, what, can't you get off that subject?
No.
No. No time for getting off that subject. And so, and a big part of the themes of your last 4 shows, but especially the 3 preceding the last one, had a lot to do with spiritual or psychic hygiene, and it just seems like whatever is about to shake is kind of almost coming with a caution, where there's this, for some reason, the skills of community and the skills of communication, the ability to focus on what needs to be handled as opposed to what offense you have taken today, or what old wound got called up because of something you saw or heard or whatever. There's just seems to be like an urgency with whatever's happening, that if you get kind of caught still in process, it's like almost as if like the opportunities won't be giving you a whole lot of process time. It's almost like this is the time to get certain skills, because it just seems as if it's the only thing that will prevent a disaster.
Well, I've been talking a lot, more and more as the years progressed, about what I've seen for this year as opposed to last year. Last year, the year of balance, pretty much where people have landed either in the net negative or the net positive, leading into this year, as I've seen through dreams and visions, waking dreams, whatnot. This year, very much the year of judgment. And I've been seeing it in relation to storms passing by, where there will be times where we're in the eye of the storm, which I believe right now we're in an eye of the storm, and we're about to hit another wall in the storm. And during the eyes of the storm is the time that we're supposed to really be working through our business or stuff. And that's speaking to what you're talking about with the sense of urgency, is during that time of not being bombarded by the storm, all the shit swirling around, all the craziness. We need to be doing that self-work, that inner reflection, that purging of the stuff that needs to be let go, the unshackling of the anchors and the tethers, and the getting rid of the dead weight, looking at the things that trigger and figuring out why it's triggering us, what power we've given over to things, and taking back that power, realizing that we only have so much power, and it's very vital that we're not giving it over to things that doesn't deserve it, basically broken down. And so in this eye of the storm, as we're leading into these certain events, which seem to be lining up spectacularly with what's happening in the sky, we're again going to slam into another wall in the storm, where it's like everything's just going to be picked up again and spun around and become very chaotic. And if we are not doing that inner work, if we're not working to lighten ourselves, enlighten ourselves, bring that inner light in, and free ourselves up from the nasty stuff, we're going to get caught up in all of the chaos and all of the distracting stuff, instead of being able to be grounded and centered and see things for what they are, have that discernment, and quite possibly even be a source of refuge for those that are almost there or need refuge from the storm. And so yes, no, we really can't be talking about other things, because there is an urgency, because if people are opening their eyes and watching what's happening, there is a literal shitstorm that is happening. And those of us that can see it, if we don't feel and know that there is an urgency or something that needs to be done, then something's wrong.
Yeah, part of being a community is you do have certain people who have those dreams and get those visions, and certain people, it was always probably natural for people to listen to people who who were recognized for having those dreamers. They were a crucial part of community, and so in the sense of community, you have been sharing, and the community is as invested as is as aware of it and cares to invest. But invest, the word invest is an interesting word, especially in a world that's so based on money. Because you think, oh, you invest money, you get money back. What about the fact that the only real value is a human being, their creativity and their labor? Without humans to do stuff, everything grinds to a halt. It isn't money, it's human labor. So that means, to kind of return even the concept of investing into a human concept, you would invest in humans. And I'm not sure where I was taking that.
Well, investing in humans, that's basically what being a community builder is all about.
Yes.
You're investing in those that are around you, the community, either the tangible physical community that is in the natural space around you, or the cyber community that we are involved in, that we interact with in a daily basis, whether it's, the unsocial medias, as I call them, Facebook and the twatters and the YouTubes. And whether we choose to invest positively or negatively, we are making an investment of our resources. Time, which I see being our most important investment. It's the only one we really can't get back. And so investing in humans or people there is a return.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what we put in generally is what we will get back. So if we invest positively, generally speaking, we will get a positive return. If we spend the time to develop and nurture and nourish a community, and something arises, a need in the community will be there to meet the need. If we decide to invest negatively in a community, or troll or ogre a community, and then a need arises, we'll quickly realize that there's nobody really around to catch us when we're on the ground. It's like the help, I've fallen and I can't get up, and we're pushing the button, and everybody that we've said negative things about or have trolled, they come around and they see us and they troll us back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we do invest.
Well, that also brings me to another kind of conversation we've had, post shows, and that was kind of almost tied into me. Where almost like where would we go? As a thing, and from my own very grounded sense, it's almost like, oh, real community. The ones that I can put my arms around you and hug. And I do. I mean, I have, my bandmates come over. They got hugged hello and goodbye. So, I'm doing okay in the real hug department. So my question for myself was, what value is there in this online community where, people are across oceans and, everybody, it's like, how could we be effective in this? What kind of almost like myself, what kind of format for effectiveness is this? And that's when I realized that you still are, if you're able to have a squabble online, and apparently there is the capability of doing that. So if squabbles can happen online, that means that there's an opportunity to cut that shit out. And because most of the time it is just shit. It's miscommunication. A lot of it often can start in text situations where that 20% of what really is that only 20% of what you think you're communicating actually gets communicated. And somebody gets something wrong, and then you start off on the wrong foot in a reply, and instantly you have silliness. And we can, and of course, basically a lot of the silliness that we're doing online, we're probably doing in real life too. So one of the ways we can have real life ramifications is starting to go, you know what? Why don't we figure out how we get along? How about that as like something to accomplish online? Doesn't matter. You can accomplish that with somebody across an ocean. And so then I really saw the value of being able to call something a community that is a cyber community, and how that you can learn very real world skills in a cyber community, especially one that affords us this kind of audio visual communication, so that we really have places where we can communicate as humans, have the differences that are kind of right now part of it's a programming that can be released, but it's part of a programming, and just work that stuff out, because we kind of are now hip to the programming that this is not the natural state of affairs. We've been told it's the natural state of affairs. It's even been encouraged to look at it as a natural state of affairs. Who does that benefit? And as soon as you ask who benefits, you go, oh, it's them again. Yes. But it's them counting on us behaving like us. And, and again, we get a little uncomfortable, and things get a little bit weird. We start to get weird, and we've been weird for a few thousand years. But that was a slow progression. It won't take thousands of years to get out of this. And time is different now. We could get all new age and slip a timeline or whatever. Um, but again, I saw a deep, real value in this, what I would consider an experiment. Because really, when you look at the cosmic, the whole cosmic thing is an experiment. That's, I mean, if you've ever gone through a real deep meditation, you kind of get that. You know, everything as almost is as it should be based on what is. And basically what is a lot of that cosmic energy is flowing through human beings. And the energy's taking a lot of left turns in a lot of cases. And that's what needs to be fixed. But we're the fixers. This isn't the waving of a divine hand, but with this eclipse, there does seem to be kind of a waving of the hand across the land. And it's almost like, pay attention.
This is being touted as the eclipse across America.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are certain things that cause me to perk up and pay attention. Whenever there is a instruction of something like across America, and it's being mimed and mimicked through different media and medium, when the talking heads on the news are establishing that this is going to sweep across America. Mm-hmm. When I can't get through a YouTube video without being interrupted every 30 seconds with an advertisement about how this eclipse is so big, it's astounding scientists because it's across America. Okay, what are we really looking at? What is really happening here? There's certain things in language, because as I say over and over again, words mean things. And those in control and power understand that words mean things. The people have seemed to have forgotten that words mean things. If we're paying attention, words mean things. We need to relearn that. And we need to pay attention to when words are repeated over and over and over again.
Right.
So, that being said, this eclipse, this darkness sweeping over the land, that's being promoted.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the next season of The Bachelor. Mm-hmm. Or Survivor.
I like your choice of words there.
What are we looking at?
Right.
And I think I'll go into the dream that I had today, if that's all right. Today was a very, very taxing day for me. As some may know, the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, neuropathy, osteoarthritis. I have several physiological conditions that have been labeled at me. So some days can be very exhausting and taxing, especially when the weather goes wonky. So today was one of those days, and I could not get enough sleep, but I could only sleep for a couple hours at a time. And in those periods of time of sleep, I was constantly going into what I called the dreaming. And in one of these dream states, I was looking up at the sun, and it was darkened except for a golden ring around it. And the as above, so below, but also equal and opposite, what was being cast on the ground was in that golden circle on the ground was a dark circle. And what was radiating out of that dark circle were tendrils that turned into snakes that started to spread across the land. And they were almost, I don't want to use the word parasitical, but everywhere that they touched, they were spreading war. It was fanning the flames of war. And we had the discussion in the pre-show about what snakes represent.
Mm-hmm.
And in a second, I would like you to break that down. But it brought me on this journey of, you know, is anybody else seeing this? Is anybody else recognizing any kind of symbolism of what's about to happen? And so it took me on a little bit of a YouTube journey. And as you remember, this is going to spread across America. I had mostly ignored what has been going on, the fuckery
Mm-hmm.
Across the United States the last couple days or week, as people are declaring that we're sparking the next civil war. And you examine the players on the field, and that's an interesting topic on itself. And it also goes back to the year of balance, going into the year of judgment. But what I found on YouTube is people were talking about how when the eclipse happens, what you'll be able to see on the ground is the solar radiation will look like tendrils or snakes traveling across the ground. There are people that have in the Bible code cracking community talking about snakes hitting the ground and spreading war. There are people that are talking about how bursts of solar radiation are going to cause people to act abnormal and be thrown into some kind of aggression.
Mm.
And I went to several different types of thought and thinking, different types of community, and it was all lining up. And so it was really interesting coming out of this dreaming and these visions that I was having, and then to go onto the YouTubes, and I spell it EWE tubes, YouTubes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very rare for me to find a multiplicity of communities from all different types of thought who normally are fighting against each other, all in alignment, all saying the same or like or in kind thing. So in my mind, I didn't see the snakes as a bad thing. I saw it as the Father Sky or Father Sun looking down and saying, all right, children, if this is what you want, Mother, do your job.
Mm.
And so then you had expressed the true nature of the serpent or the snake.
Well, I guess the word true could be a trigger word.
Oh no, not a trigger.
You know,
go and watch my video on triggers if you're triggered.
You know, the way the snake was interpreted for tens of thousands of years was as a symbol of wisdom, or at least earth wisdom. And but then, you know, new schools of thought came along and the serpent became evil. So the serpent is an interesting kind of symbol to cast because it has this dual nature to it. And you have to look at both sides of the symbol. So you have to look at one side, everything negative with what a bunch of snakes being released into the public, how that would be perceived at one level, especially where snakes are bad. And then there's another one where you could just see this as like, almost like plasmic currents of the intelligence of the earth, shooting out. And that creating that energy that when it runs through people is going to filter according to what's going on in there. So in certain cases, it might create short circuiting. And when humans short circuit, they usually get pretty violent. I mean, to me, that's a sign of a human short circuiting. Violent behavior is not our norm. Especially when it's not in the moment and your life is not endangered. You know what I mean? We have to qualify violence so people don't come up with, what about this? It's understood. But I'm talking about, the kind of violence, unnecessary violence. Because there aren't many instances where violence is necessary. And that would be a nice meme to presence that violence is rarely necessary. And if you or something really, really precious isn't in danger, and any other means of restoring calm is available, violence is just not the way to do things. But there is a violence in the air, and the usual suspects, the deep state and their different aura. I mean, there is a fanning of this to even suggest civil war as a phrase is, to me, highly irresponsible. I mean, if that's different, it's being shouted on the streets. I don't think it should be coming out of TV studios.
No, and that is what really took me aback, is that it's being promoted on mainstream news.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's being promoted. And there was the defacing of the Lincoln Memorial, and in some of the promos, the image that they were showing was from the movie The Purge, like the third Purge movie, where it said Purge, but the actual defacing was minuscule, and it was on the inner tuck of the column, not in big bold Purge, lettering.
Right.
And so it's even false advertisement to really psych people up. And again, this circles back to what you were saying, when that kind of strikes them, where they're at is going to determine basically if it incites them or not. This goes back to 2016, the year of balance, where people landed with the net negative or net positive, leading into the year of judgment, which was interesting. After I had said that, we started noticing that the cover of The Economist had the judgment card with Trump on it, and then they had to take all of those off the shelf and replace it with the eagle.
Oh.
And then articles started coming out, is this the year of judgment? And then it was all over the news, 2017, the year of judgment. So this is something that has been documented. And as we go into this, it really, really seems to be that everything has been falling into place. And again, it seems to be just like last year. It's the August month that seems to be the tipping point. And in this window, again, this is why there's that urgency, because those of us in the shamanistic or greater mystic community are seeing these dominoes have already been put into place, and someone's finger is already nudging the first one. And what we've been speaking to is make sure that you're grounded, make sure that you're centered, make sure that, speaking of triggering, if you find yourself being triggered, find out why. What is the root? We need to start doing our maintenance on ourselves, not enforcing maintenance on others, not forcing others to conform to our ideals of what people should be doing or behaving, but making sure that we are in alignment. And in that, if someone else does something askew or sideways, it really won't bother us. And when the war drums start sounding and the clarion call for war does sound, it's not going to trigger us into an inanimate meat suit mindlessly going off to zombie war.
Right. Yeah, obviously, we need to create a dialogue and and realize that we cannot approach each other with an argument, with the idea that we're going to start the discussion with an argument. And as far as all of these statues, I mean, as far, I almost feel like, what, how about the government, just whoever you want, any statue is fair game. Go right on it, go throw a bag of urine at it, burn a bag of shit at it, like almost, you want to spray paint the Lincoln Memorial. This, something, because at the end of the day, this is only concrete. This is only concrete, marble, metal, bronze, whatever it is. I could, and even to the point where, like, let's say, somebody's defacing a statue that you personally think is offensive. Ignore it. It's only a statue. Let's start to get perspective where, it's history, even Robert E. Lee, he was a general. I mean, I would like to see no generals up. I mean, war is one of the ugliest things that can happen with it. It's not, nobody's calling them cowards or they're bad for doing it, but let's not celebrate it. Let's not celebrate the lowest thing that humans can do to each other, which is to war against each other. So that's what occurred to me when somebody brought up the Robert Lee statue. I didn't mention it, but I was just saying, you know what? I'm tired of generals. I'm tired of celebrating people who left bodies behind them. And again, this is not to make them bad, but celebrating them, kind of like holding this up, like, this is something to aspire to be the great Robert E. Lee. There are far better aspirations, and growing a good garden is a better one.
And how divisive it is.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of divisiveness that we allow as individuals, as communities, as a country, over things. They're things.
Yeah. As the flag is. I mean, again, do I think burning a flag is a particularly brilliant thing to do? No. But again, it's a piece of polyester or cotton, whatever they make it of. And it's, you don't want to invest your personality, your personage into these symbols that occasionally people are going to act out. Or if they're not beating on your face, You know, I mean, we have to, you know, we have to stop looking for reasons to get into arguments, or we have to, I have to defend the flag. I mean, really? Is a crying victim? You know, you know, please, the people who sell flags be more than glad. Go ahead, please. Everybody burn a flag a day and come in to buy a new one. You know?
Yes. And technically, there are circumstances, one, where you're supposed to burn the flag.
Yeah. Again, this is not about the right or wrong of, you know, like, you know, whether you think, you know, whether or not you think it's really despicable or not. But the fact is, to not find ways of being at odds where we're ready to, you know, it's one thing to, in opinion, go, boy, that, you know, did you really have to do that? You know, or you know, whatever, you know, you can express your disgust, but that could be, you know, that really could be the end of it. Well, this is what I think of your flag. I know, I understand, I see. It's point made. If you were making a point, I get it. But we have to just stop reacting to things that were almost like programmed to react, because if we don't react that way, that's maybe there's something wrong with us. And I think taking the time out to examine whether there be something wrong with us behaving one way or not is time well spent.
It takes a lot more time to have to undo negative behavior and work through the negative consequences of negative behavior than it does to take that time to pause, do some critical thinking, work through whatever junk we have to work through in ourselves, and then manage the positive consequences of that. Mm-hmm. But you said a very strong word there, programming. And it's incredible how much we've allowed as a people ourselves to be programmed to certain triggered behavior. And that, again, is part of that inner work that we're talking about, is to look at why we react and respond and behave in the ways that we do, especially in the very strong ways we do surrounding certain things. Now, yes, there are histories behind certain things. The key word is history. Mm-hmm. And that also takes inner work. Because either we do the work to process through the pain, the generational PTSD, the hurt and anger of what is possibly even currently going on. Mm-hmm. And we learn how to gain these skills and the tools to rise above it and continue moving forward. Or we live in what I describe as a cyclical room of razors, where we're just continually spinning in this room of razors that continually cut us open, continually wounding us, that we continually have to try to heal in, but we keep getting cut open. Where we could walk through the door into the room of mirrors and do the self-examination. Mm-hmm. Take the look in the mirror at what I call our shitty selves and allow the healing to start happening. And in that, we're not getting constantly cut open. We can allow those wounds to actually heal, and we can work through the stuff we need to work through so that we can actually become productive and not wound others while we're spinning around being wounded in circles, just spinning and spinning and spinning.
I would just like to say to the audience for a moment, in case you haven't seen a Raksha Moose live stream, much of the live stream deals with these concepts in a kind of a walkabout storyteller fashion. And so and he's on Thursday evenings, was it like 9 p.m. Eastern time?
Yep. Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, and that's more of the deeper end stuff. And Sundays at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, and that's more of the graduated, lighter topical stuff for those that aren't quite ready for the deep dive.
Okay. So I just wanted to let people just be aware of that, because a lot of the material that we actually cover when he and I have our Mystic and Moose meetings has to do, I mean, if you're interested, if you say, oh, this sounds kind of interesting, this looking inside a certain way, that going to a Raksha Moose live stream is one of the ways to kind of take that walk. And I have known Raksha for a few months, but it took a while before we did, we found the time and the need to kind of like have a powwow, a personal powwow. And I consider myself fairly impeccable in my self-examination. Because I work at it, it's something I presence. But the beautiful thing was, because of Raksha taking similar journeys, it was just really interesting how taking a journey, listening to Raksha, makes me look in like little corners. It's almost like imagining like cleaning, and you missed one corner just because there's so many corners. It wasn't even like you should have known. No, I missed it. And how by taking certain kinds of these inward looks, you kind of see some of the corners. And if your intention is to have your corners clean, then you want to be able to see them. And so I was able to find, through doing certain kinds of looking around with Raksha, because Raksha kind of takes you with him. And my inner landscape seemed to have a few places in it that I hadn't noticed. And it wasn't that they were dirt to clean. They were doors I had never opened before and looked at what was in them. And in those doors were new skills for me. And so coming from a place, again, of thinking, I got my shit fairly well together, to the humbling part, and again, beautifully humbling, because being humbled is a beautiful feeling. It just kind of reminds you, first of all, if you get humbled, it reminds you that you needed to untweak something. So, again, it's fine to feel good about yourself, but there is a way of walking with humility that isn't false humility. False humility is really passive aggressive stuff. But just the humility of, I am always learning no matter what. And just to kind of remind, no matter how much you have to offer, the universe still has more to offer you. And the universe will sometimes unveil itself in your meditations, but also come out of the mouths of people that you're talking to. And if you're paying attention, you suddenly realize, basically source, God, whatever, use this opportunity for that language to find my ears. And so I guess I'm just kind of opening people up that have not seen a Raksha Moose show to maybe consider it, because it's that what we're calling psychic or psychological hygiene, and it's a tune-up. No matter how clean you are, I don't know. I just find it's a good tune-up. It's kind of like, having somebody, is there any dirt on my back? It's kind of like one of those moments. So anyway, that's all right. Enough of my speaking of my own personal joy in taking a Raksha Moose walkabout.
I definitely appreciate it. And something I state over and over again, a teacher is forever a student. No one has all of the answers. We're forever learning, and none of us are ever done with the healing journey. And part of us coming together and meeting in that sacred space was having that discussion in that it doesn't have to always be that tumultuous, messy healing process where we're going into that deep wounded place, but it is, a lot of times it is that maintenance work that needs to be done. And the beautiful part, or one of the many beautiful parts of community, is, I enter community and I bring a piece, and then you enter community and you have a piece, and someone else enters community and they have a piece, and we all come together and we all have these pieces that we can start putting together, and we get to see the larger picture. And if we try to lone wolf it, we miss so much that we just simply will not be able to see or get or hear or feel.
Yeah, there are certain people, I guess, who enjoy being the lone wolf, and then sometimes there's sometimes some lone wolf behavior is situational.
Mm-hmm.
Certain lone wolves leave the pack. Other lone wolves just have a little trouble finding a pack to fit into. But it's being a lone wolf is not a very effective way of doing things. Usually a lone wolf will serve themselves best in that arrangement, and largely be the main beneficiary of that lone wolf behavior. And so, yeah.
And just to speak on that, what I found most of the time is a lone wolf is a lone wolf because they've been hurt so many times by people that have welcomed them with a smile that is hiding bared fangs. And something that is a little bit different about the community that we're speaking of that happens over at my channel is very much foundational on what I would do in the real world when I would go into places and say, send me the people you don't know what to do with, send me your throwaways, send me the people you consider trash. I don't mind playing in the gutter. And they would. And then they would ask me, how did you do that? How were you able to take someone that, was this, and this, and had this roadblock, and had this, this whatever, and now they have a full-time job and a place to live, and they have this skill and that skill. And it really boils down to is because I was not afraid to say, hello, fellow human.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can start breaking down those barriers and stop othering the others and realize that at the end of the day and the beginning of the day and everywhere and every point in between, that we are all just people. And we all have need.
Mm-hmm.
But we all can bring something to the table. Everybody can do something. We all have worth. Some just might need a reminder. To bring that love space is very important. So if there's anyone that is watching or listening to this and might be thinking, well, I've tried community before, but nobody seems to be able to handle me. Check us out. We definitely have a varied cast of characters.
That was so classic Moose, what you just did. Um, it's so many thoughts are occurring while you're speaking, and I should, the last time I brought out a piece of paper and was writing them down, and I haven't exercised the same discipline. So, and I apologize also, as I told you earlier, I got up uncharacteristically early today. So I don't know if I look a little tired to anybody, I also apologize. But I really wanted to do this show, was looking forward to doing it, as much for the pre-show as the show. And Rox and I have just have a really good time together. And as we do with other people too. But, you know, it's just...
There's something dynamic in a one-on-one.
Yeah.
That is special. It's very enjoyable.
So I don't know where else to take the conversation. So I don't know if you have more, please share. Otherwise, I won't try and fake that there's more to this.
I think closing thought would be, we know that just by observation that the hornet's nest has been stirred, and the data streams that are coming in is messy times ahead ? So if you're listening to this and you're paying attention to what's going on outside, it really is up to you whether or not you want to be prepared. And the level of preparedness that you want to be at is ultimately up to you. And that is ultimately your responsibility. It's not anybody else's. And it's not anybody else's fault or responsibility if you're not prepared. And that is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. It really boils down to the time of blaming other people for our own flaws, mistakes, or issues. That circle is coming tighter and tighter and tighter until it's a dot and it closes. Self-accountability, self-realization, self-evaluation.
As when you started your closing thought, I realized that there was one piece of the solstice that I had heard from one of the, I was listening to some solstice stuff also, and was that there's certain symbology about, the blacking out of the sun, okay, especially where it's a total solar eclipse. But then after that is the reveal. And that there's supposedly some tie-in with kind of reveal energy. And since this is the great exceptional nations eclipse, makes you wonder what might get revealed.
Yes.
With the kind of government we've had for a long time, and right up to till today, there are so many different things that could be revealed that would fulfill, that this is what would be coming, and you could pick one of dozens that would be probably fairly shocking for the average person. And it'd be very interesting because, in a world where conspiracy theories are floating around like clouds in the sky. And that's not to say that, again, I'm using the word conspiracy theory is, the questions of the official narrative. But in the questions of that official narrative, there is a lot of supposition. And some of that supposition is more like a suppository. And so if there is a reveal, I mean, this will be, like something that everybody sees. So this is the kind of stuff that could be shocking even to hardened conspiracy people. I mean, this has the potential to be an eye opener if this kind of energy does happen. It's one of the things I'm keeping an eye out for after the fact, like, and immediately, like, in 24 hours after, it's like, did something that would surprise us suddenly pop out into the open? Something that you never really expected to see, and suddenly there it is. So it's a big stay tuned.
Very much.
Okay, so I guess I'll say goodnight and thank you everybody for joining us for the Mystic and Moose. This was number 3, wasn't it? Yes, it was.
Yes.
So this was Countdown to the Eclipse with the sub theme of cohesion. Staying with the C's. We're being very alliterative. And Moose, why don't you say goodnight?
Much love and many blessings.
Thank you.